Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 3 of Interplay. Remember, we're using this book right here, so that's what I'm going after. But in looking at the old Interplay book, I find that there's a lot of similarities there, if almost identical, if I'm not mistaken. So you should be fine in the way you read it. Okay. So with that being said, um, let me get started. We're going to start off on so we're on the same page here, page 69. All right, so chapter 3 is interpersonal communication and the self, right? And so we kind of discussed this a little bit previously, sort of maybe in conversations, is that part of the way that we communicate with other people and the way that other people communicate with us is based on how we see ourselves. Who are we? Who do we represent? What do we act like? It's how you see yourself will determine how you speak, how you carry yourself, your body language, all that stuff. So this actually it's pretty important for as we move forward, because it's really important for you to know who you are before you know before you can learn to communicate with other people and before other people can communicate with you. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so communication and the self concept. How does the self concept develop? So the book really counts on two ways that we start to see ourselves in a certain way. And the first one is a reflected appraisal. And that's really, when you look at reflection, you think the mirror, right? So who do you see in the mirror? Do you see someone that's confident? Do you see someone that's shy? Do you see someone who's tall, who's short? Do you see someone um, who is a great communicator, or do you see someone who tends to be quiet? Who do you see when you look at yourself in the mirror? And it's really important to understand that, because how you see yourself is going to be likely how others will see you. Not because that's the reality, but because if you act like you are like that way, like if you act like you're shy, then other people are then going to treat you as if you're shy, right? You determine that in a lot of ways. So it's really important for you to be able to see that. And also remember that things are arbitrary. I'm 6 feet. And so when I see myself in the mirror, I don't necessarily see myself as tall. I consider myself maybe below average. That may not be necessarily true, because on the average, as you know, I'm hanging out with my friends or hanging out with other dads, when there's big get-togethers, I tend to be one of the taller people, one of the taller dads, but I don't see myself that tall because I used to play a lot of basketball. I don't play basketball that much anymore, but when I did, people were always taller than I was. I played against guys who were 6'8", 6'9", 6'4", 6'5", and I was just like, I'm just 6 feet. There's a huge difference there, right? So I didn't see myself as being tall where somebody else might. So that's also sort of a difference to consider. And that's where it leads us to social comparison. How do you see yourself compared to other people? And like I said, when I saw myself, I saw a short person because that's what I saw in the mirror. But it's also partially because I would compare myself to other people I was hanging out with, other people in this case that I was playing basketball with. So how you see yourself is always in comparison to another person. For example, would you consider yourself to be a successful person? Someone might say, well, you're no Jeff Bezos, so if you don't have $1 million in the bank, no, you're not successful. Well, is that the measurement that we're using? Is that the comparison that we're going to make? Success is based on this or based on that? If that's the case, yeah, I mean, whatever you compare yourself to, that's the measure of your success. And sometimes the bar is set real high that you're down here. We set the bar low, all of a sudden what? Success becomes reachable. It's just a matter of your mindset, right? Now, some of the characteristics of self-concept, and I talked about this a little bit, is that self-concept is subjective. It's not set in stone. What you see may not be what other people see, right? It's different. It's subjective. It changes. It evolves. It flows. And so it's important to understand that it is not the same thing for everybody, right? The next thing is that a healthy self-concept is flexible. You bend, right? You adapt, you change in accordance to who you're with, what you're doing, who you're hanging out with, whatever the situation is, right? It's flexible, it changes. It's still you, but it just changes a little bit. And a great example of that is how do you act when you're with your friends, and then how do you act when you're at work? And chances are, when you're at work, you'll probably tend to be maybe just a little bit reserved, and you probably wouldn't talk to your customers the same way you would talk to your best friend. It's just not the same level of casualness. Why? It bends a little, right? It's flexible. Your personality is flexible. It changes according to the scenario and the environment that you're in. Okay. Now, one thing to understand is the self concept resists change, and it's important to understand that we resist change because nobody likes change. Change is hard. Change is different. Change is weird, right? Well, why do we want to change? And why do we want to get ourselves out of our comfort zone? I'm happy here. I don't want to move. But sometimes you have to, right? And so even though, the key word here, it resists, it doesn't mean you can't change, but it just resists change. And so sometimes it takes a lot of willpower to overcome that resistance. But you could still change, right? You could still do better for yourself, right? Um, Next thing we have here is called the self-fulfilling prophecy and communication. And there's a lot of types of self-fulfilling prophecy. One of the ways that people a lot of times um, will look at is saying something like whether you're wrong or whether you're right. Either way, or no, I'm sorry. What was it's whether you think you're wrong or whether you think you're right. Either way, you're right. In other words, and I don't think I quoted that correctly, but really the premise of that thought is that if you think you're going to do something wrong, chances are you think you're going to be wrong. If you think that you're going to be doing something right, chances are it's going to be right, right? The idea here is whatever you think is going on is probably what's going to happen. And sort of the great notion of that, what I get from a lot of students is that as they're taking a quiz or they're doing something or they're giving a speech, they're automatically telling themselves, "Oh man, I'm gonna do terrible. I'm gonna do terrible. Oh, I can't believe I did. Oh, I didn't study for the final. I'm gonna get an F. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God." And then what happens? They go off. They get an F. And see, I told you. I told you I was getting an F. I knew it. I knew it. You psych yourself out, right? You yourself bring to light what you are fearing the most, right? You bring it to fruition, right? And so, your dreams become your reality, or in this case, maybe your nightmares become your reality. But the idea here is that whether you think you're going to fail or whether you think you're going to do good, chances are the more positive you think about something, the more positive results you're likely to get. Now, in the example that I gave about someone not studying for the exam and failing, well, not studying for the exam is probably going to give you a bad grade. You can't sort of will your way to an A if you don't, if you didn't practice, you didn't study. But studying will actually increase your positivity, and positivity will then lead you to have a more positive outcome, right? And you see this a lot in sports where they talk about visualization. In baseball, sometimes they'll say, see yourself hitting the ball or keep your eye on the ball, right? And it's called sort of a mental memory, right? You're training your mind to see yourself doing something, and chances are your body will then follow. And if your mind sees your body failing, chances are your body will then fail, right? So for a lot of people, visualization is really key to their success. But going back to a self-fulfilling prophecy, it's the idea here. It's like your emotions, your mentality will dictate a lot of times the level of success that you're going to reach. And if you keep on telling yourself that you're going to fail, chances are you're going to fail, right? Now, the next thing we have here is presenting the self. First of all, and I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about how you act at work versus you act with your friends, is that you have a public self and a private self. And in the public self, that's what everybody sees. How you act around a whole lot of people, that's who you are. But you're also a private self. And that's how you act within a certain smaller group of people, people that you trust, people that you're close to. It could be your family, it could be your close friends, but this is a very small number of people. And how you act around them is also you, but it's also a little bit different because you act differently. You say certain words that you don't say in public, or vice versa. There's certain things you say in public that you don't say in private. And so the idea here is that you have a public self and a private self. Okay. Now, some of the characteristics of impression management, and impression management is the idea is that you control to a certain extent how people see. And a lot of us probably have heard the idea here, especially when you're going to a job interview, is you only have one time to make a good first impression, right? I think we've all sort of heard that before. And it's true to a certain degree. We only have, when you only meet someone once for the first time. Yeah, maybe next time you meet them, they may have forgotten about you, so you meet them again. But technically speaking, it's still the second time. The first time is always the first time. And so therefore, there's ways that we see ourselves, and how we manage how others see us, especially for the first time. So some of the first impressions that we have here is that we strive to construct multiple identities. And as I mentioned earlier, you have a public and a private self. You have a lot of faces, right? Your face of your work is one. Your face of a family person is two. Your face of or your impression, your personality of a friend is different. How you act with your friends, how you act with your coworkers, how you act with your family, it's different. And we have multiple identities. And no, we're not talking about, something that's sort of off the wall. But the reality is that we act differently in different places. And so we construct all these different people so that we can adapt better, right? The next thing we have is impression management is collaborative. And what that means is that impression is only, I mean, when you control your impression, that means that there's somebody else there, right? That means that somebody else is there to be impressed upon you, and someone is there to see you and to formulate an idea of who you are. In other words, it's collaborative. All changing your impressions in a private room with nobody else but you. Well, it's still you. Nobody else is there, so that's why it's collaborative, because it's more than one person. It takes other people to help mold who you are in different situations. And then impression management can be deliberate or unconscious. A lot of times, who you are will come out deliberately. You tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to act this way and I'm going to do this when I'm here. Other times, it's subconscious. Other times, you may not even notice it. There's a couple times when you're at a party or at a relative's house, and you're just kind of quiet. You're not saying much, and people are asking you, "Hey, are you okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, why?" And they're like, "Oh, you're just so quiet." You're like, "Oh, I didn't know I was being quiet, right?" You weren't even thinking about it. Maybe your mind is on something else that's going on in your life that just kind of took your attention away from what's going on with everybody else, and everybody assumed that you're just quiet when you're like, "No, I didn't realize I was being quiet." Right? So that's what it means about being unconscious, is you're not even thinking about it. Now, there's something called face-to-face impression management, and that's the idea of you controlling the impression that other people have about you in real life situations when someone is physically in front of you, right? The next one we have is impression management in social media, and this is a situation where it's how you present yourself on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, or whatever other social media you're using, is how do people see you, and how do you control what they see, right? And so that's actually really important because social media has a little bit more control about what people do and how they see you. So I have more control of that. I could re-record. If I don't like this video, I could re-record it and just give you another one if I think that I didn't do a good job of recording. And I want to make sure I do a good job because I want you to feel like you're getting the information. But a lot of times what happens, especially in social media, especially the influencers, is that a lot of times the control is so much that you don't know what's real and what's deliberate, right? And a lot of times you hear about the term catfishing, right? Where someone is pretending to be someone that they're not. And so it's a matter of managing your impression on social media, which actually leads us to honesty. you know there's a certain amount of honesty that we put forth on social media, but at the same time there's some honesty that maybe isn't deliberate or isn't there. It's taking a picture of you in front of a car, a very expensive car, only to find out that it's not even yours. It's taking a picture of you being in the woods saying you're going for a great hike in the mountains, only to find yourself in the backyard, right? There's a certain amount of honesty that goes on with social media and a certain amount of honesty that's sort of expected. Now, with that being said, what do you share about yourself? What are you willing to share about yourself? And there's a couple factors that go into what you share about yourself. One is honesty. How honest are you going to be? Are you going to tell people the total truth and just be transparent right off the bat? Or how deep are you going to go into your information? Do you just tell them, oh, oh yeah, I have a family, but are you going to say how many family members you have, how many stepbrothers, how many stepsisters? Do you have a stepdad? Do you have a stepmom? Are your parents divorced? Do you live in the same house? How much of the information are you actually going to give? The other thing is the information even available for you to share? Can you share it, right? There's information there. Do you even know what the information is, or can you share the information? And then the last thing here is the context of sharing. Who are you sharing it to? When are you sharing it? Where are you sharing that information, right? All of that sort of plays a big role as to the information that you disclose about yourself. And here, this is actually one that I liked a little bit better than what's in the book. But the book, Model 3.2, actually talks about the model of self-disclosure. And here, I like the way the picture depicts is that the center is really your core, right? That's really your core information. That's information that's just personal to you and you only, and only few people know about it. After that, it gets a little broader, which is personal information. That, again, it's really personal to you. It's not hardcore yours, but it is pretty personal. Then you have something that's more intimate, which is likely something that friends, family members are more likely to know, in sort of in general maybe. And then in green, it's called superficial because it's stuff you share with everybody. It's public information. I'm 6 feet tall. I go out on the street, everybody can see that I'm tall. All right. Why am I gonna hide that? Right? It's not. It's if you ask me, hey, how tall are you? Well, I'm 6 feet. Why? Because well, you can see, get a measuring tape. It's superficial information. And so when you're talking about depth, it's talking about when you share information with somebody is how deep of the core do you go to? And then when you talk about breath, and it's not breath like what you breathe, but we're talking about breaths, right? DTH. That's what information you share. That's what that means. It's it's the breadth of the information. What information are you okay with sharing? Like for example, someone may ask you about your school, and then you might say, "Oh, I go to Cal State." And then they say, "Oh, well, what's your major?" And then you're like, "Communications." Well, what do you want to do with communications? They're like, "Hey, why are you asking all these questions? I just met you." Right? And so it gets deeper in that specific subject area. But somebody starts talking about basketball. Hey, do you play basketball? Yeah. Oh, do you have a favorite team? The Lakers. Oh, what do you think of the Lakers? Oh, I think they're great. This and that and that and this. Right? For that one, you didn't have any problem sharing a little bit more personal information. So it just depends on what's going on. Okay. Okay. The other thing that's going on here is the awareness of self-disclosure, and this is called the Johari window. This is figure 3.3, and this is very similar to what's in the book, but again, I thought this was a little bit better. So here you have a box that depicts different things for different situations. Now, let's go to here the open self. And this is information about you that both you and others know about you. That's why if you look at the top, it'll say known to self. And then on the left of it, it'll say known to others. That's open information. Just about everybody knows I like basketball. Everybody knows I'm a professor. Everybody knows I have a family. That's open information. But then you have what's called the blind self. And the blind self is information about you that you don't know, but that others do, right? That's why it says at the top, unknown to self, but on the left of it, it's still known to others. And what that means is that sometimes you have a personality quirk that just you think is just totally normal, and other people are like, well, that's a little odd, right? And the great example to that is sometimes you'll have someone who's like, um, Very confident. Oh, I'm just very confident. I'm pretty sure about what I do, and they carry themselves with a really a great amount of confidence, and to them it's confidence, but to everybody else, man, that person's just conceited. They're full of themselves, right? They are blind to see that that really isn't confidence. It's being self-centered, right? So then we have here what's called the hidden self. And in the hidden self, it's information about you that you know, but that others don't. So if you look to the left of that box, it says unknown to others, but at the top, it's known to self, right? So here, it's a situation where maybe you're a great singer and you know you're a great singer, sorry. Um, you sing in the shower, you sing by yourself at home, whatever the case is, you just love to sing and you have a beautiful voice and you know it, but you're shy and you don't like singing in front of other people. So what happens is, here you are being a great, beautiful singer, but nobody knows it, right? It's just you. It's called a hidden self, right? And then here, the last box here, it's unknown self. It's information about you that neither you nor others know. It's unknown to you and it's unknown to other people. And a lot of times this might be a hidden talent. For example, let's go back to the singing part. Yeah, you like singing, but you never thought it was good. You never thought it was anything big. I sing in the shower what's a big deal, right? I like Alicia Keys. I like singing that or whoever, right? And then all of a sudden you and your friends go to a karaoke bar and they dare you to sing and you're like, no, no, I don't want to. Come on, go, go, go. And everybody has a turn, so you say, okay, I'll go. And then you start singing and everybody's just like, oh my God, you have such a beautiful voice. And you're like, oh, I do. I didn't know that, right? It's a hidden talent. You didn't even know you could sing. You just, you sing, but you didn't know you could sing, right? It's unknown to you. And now it's open to everybody. Now that everybody's heard you and now that everybody has told you you're a good singer, now that goes from unknown self to open self. Okay? So unknown self is really things that you don't know about you and that others don't know about you. Okay? Now, this is what sometimes hold people back about sharing information about themselves, right? And remember, this is one-on-one here, right? So think of like maybe you going on a date or something like that and you meet someone for the first time. What are some of the things that you're willing to share and some of the things that you're not? And why don't you share that information, right? So let's talk about some of the benefits and risks of self-disclosure. So some of the benefits of self-disclosure is called catharsis. And that's like a weight lifted off your shoulder. Imagine for a second that you're throwing a birthday surprise party, right? And you can't tell that person what's going on and you can't say what's going on. But then the moment that they come into the house and you're surprise, surprise, and oh my God, da, 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 da. That's like a weight because they're like, oh my God, I was holding that secret for so long. I'm so glad I'm glad it off my back. That's what's going on here. The idea here is that you had a secret that you couldn't share, not necessarily for bad reasons, but the minute you're able to sort of disclose that information, it sort of felt like, I was able to get it off my chest here, right? Self-clarification, it's you. Sometimes there's information that's out there that's not exactly true or accurate. So you clarify the information or you validate the information that, yeah, indeed, that is true. I did do that, right? So sometimes that's important. The next one here is reciprocity. Okay, and reciprocity is the idea that if someone tells you a secret or tells you something, you in return will sort of share something back. A lot of times we're in relationships, right? And one person will share and share, how was your day? Oh my God, I just did this, I just did that, and you're like, and they're like, oh, and they go on, they share all this information with you, and then they ask you, oh, well, enough about me, I've talked a lot. What about you? How was your day? Fine. Anything new? No. And you're just like, okay, right? It's not balanced. This person here is giving you all this information, and this person's here is like, I'm okay, right? And so the idea here is reciprocity is that if I share something with you, sometimes you feel compelled to share something back. You have impression formation, where a lot of times you want that person to have a good impression of you, so you share information that maybe highlights something about you that not everybody knows that gives them a positive impression about you. Then you have relationship maintenance and enhancement. A lot of times you want to share information with somebody else because you just want the relationship to go bigger, to get better, to enhance it, to maintain it. We talked a little bit a while ago about reciprocity. If someone's sharing personal information, but you don't really care who that person is, you're like, fine. Yeah. You're like, oh, you can tell me whatever you want, but hey, we're not like that. We're a little, you know, you keep your distance here. But hey, you want to share, you share, right? But if that person is someone that's important to you, your partner, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, you know, a lot of times sharing something about you will enhance your relationship. It'll maintain it. And sometimes you have a moral obligation. Moral obligation is the idea. It's like, hey, I saw something. And as much as it pains me to tell you, I have to let you know what's going on. This is a situation where maybe you see your best friend and their partner, their boy girlfriend, and during the day, and then at night you go off to dinner, and then you see their partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, and they're having dinner and being all romantic with somebody else. What do you do? For some people, they say, I have a moral obligation to share that information with people. Other people are like, hey, it's none of my business. Your morals are sort of different. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's just people have different morals, right? So if you see the partner, boyfriend, girlfriend of your best friend having dinner with somebody else in a romantic fashion, and you could tell that they're romantic, are you obligated to tell your friend? Now, some of the risks of self-disclosure, things that can happen negative towards you. One, rejection. Once I tell you something, you're just going to be mad at me and you're not going to want to talk to me. Or you could have a negative impression. I did something and I'm honest with you, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I never knew you that way, or oh, I can't see you the same way ever again. It's a negative impression. You can decrease relational satisfaction. Sometimes telling someone the truth can actually hurt the relationship, right? So it's a matter of weighing whether or not you should tell that person. And mind you, I'm not saying yes or no to that. It's just that can happen. There's loss of influence by telling you what I've done. It could potentially lose my influence over our relationship. In other words, you don't see me the same way, or you don't think I'm smart, or you don't think I'm this or I'm that. I lose control of the situation. All of a sudden, I'm not in control of what's going on. And this is the other thing, is that it could hurt the other person. Me being honest with you could hurt you. Me telling you that I saw your boyfriend with another girl could potentially hurt your feelings. So do I really want to put you through that? Right? So those are some of the things that that are at risks. So how do you know whether to yes, disclose, or no, don't disclose? So there's a couple ways. Some of the guidelines here is, who's the other person that you're talking to? Are they important to you? Are they someone that's important in your life? If they're a stranger, it probably wouldn't matter. But if they have an important place in your life, well, that's going to play a role as to whether or not you're going to tell them information. The second thing is, is the risk of disclosing reasonable? If I tell, for example, if I'm holding a secret that we're going to throw you a birthday party, and I tell you, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You come and you pretend to be surprised. You know, is it reasonable? Versus me telling you something that can have a really deep impact in you or your relationship with somebody else. Is the self-disclosure appropriate? Should I tell you something about myself that maybe I shouldn't tell you, based on our relationship, maybe based on who you are, right? Will the self-disclosure be reciprocated? If I tell you a secret, are you then going to tell me a secret? And if you're not, what's the point of me being open with you? And then, will it be constructive? Will it help? Will me telling you this information about myself actually help and be constructive? Or if it really doesn't matter, then what's the point of telling you? Now, if you don't want to self-disclose, there's a couple of things that people do. They just don't say anything at all, right? They stay silent. They lie, right? Or it's called equivocation, and this is where you sort of like make something up. You're not necessarily lying, but you're not necessarily telling the truth. So in the book, it gives you an example of art. But let's just say that you got a gift from someone, and let's say you just got a t-shirt and you're just not liking the t-shirt. And so they say, oh, do you like it? You're like, oh, wow, you really put a lot of effort into this, thank you. I didn't really answer the question, right? I sort of just kind of went around it. And then the other one is just hinting. And hinting here is really me hinting to somebody else, um, that, yeah, we should do this or we should do that, but not necessarily telling them the truth. So if I'm out on a date with someone, for example, and it's just not going well, and I kind of want to go home now, I'm gonna be like, wow, it's getting late, huh? What's that hinting at? Like, yeah, it's true. It is getting late, but if I was having a good time, it probably wouldn't matter. But because I'm not having a good time, by me saying, hey, it's late, I'm sort of hinting the idea to say, hey, you know what? Time to call it a night. Okay? Anyways, all right. So that's chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really good chapter. I think it really takes an opportunity for you to reflect about who you are, how you see yourself, why you act the way you do, how do you speak to other people, and why and what you share with other people. All right. Well, hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you ever need to talk to me, send me a quick email, or if you ever want to have a private meeting, we can always arrange that too. All right. Take care. Have a good day, everybody.